Okay, so on top of being able to do file history backups and all that, we also have the concept that, and on occasion, we need to be able to recover things in Windows 10. So Microsoft has some recovery capabilities that allow us to restore things and recover. First off, if we go into Control Panel, we have some tools there that can assist us. We have a Windows backup tool that's been around since the Windows 7 days. It's called Backup and Restore. So we can go in there and we can create something called a system image, okay, which is a little different than a WIM image that we talked about earlier in the course. But if you look up here, if you look closely at system image here, you'll notice you can create a system image. This is going to back up your operating system settings and all of that. And if Windows was to have a massive failure, you can actually restore that image. You can back that system image up wherever you want, and you could then have maybe an external hard drive or something, and you could restore that image if something really bad happened to Windows. Of course, the downside of that is you do need to occasionally update that image because you don't want to have an image from like 10 years ago and restore back to 10 years ago, right? You've also got system repair disk. Now, this will let you create like a DVD that backs up the critical stuff. Instead of the entire operating system, it's going to back up your critical Windows system files, your drivers. It's going to back up boot configuration information, and it's going to back up your registry. And of course, that'll go on that. It can go on a DVD, and if things break on Windows, you could use that to restore your settings. Same thing though. You don't want to do that from like 10 years ago. You want to periodically update that. Okay. Now also you can go here and click on set up backup. You can set up a backup here and you can specify what you want to back up, what files you want to back up, and then you can, if you had your files backed up, you could restore those files. Now this little backup tool is just a real simple little tool that we can use in Windows if we do want to back our files up manually. This is a way for us to do it. We can also schedule backups. Keep in mind, you do have to be a member of the backup operators group that's on the machine in order to do backups. Now, granted, I'm an administrator on the machine, so I have the authority to perform backups. So that gives you an idea of what the backup tool does. I also want to show you that I can go right here and click System, and I can go to System Protection, and I've got on this screen here something called System Restore that I can do. That's really cool. Now granted, System Restore is turned off by default, but you can configure this to be turned on. You can designate a certain amount of disk space that you'll allow it to use. I'm going to give it 20 gigs, and at that point I could turn it on. Now right now I've got a group policy on this machine that's not going to let me turn this on, but if I was able to turn it on, what this is going to do, it's going to create these little snapshots, what they call snapshots or system restore points. And anytime you go to install something on this machine, it's going to go through the process of creating a restore point for you. And then what will happen is if something breaks, you can do a restore. Now, what is a restore point? Well, you remember that little disk thing I was talking about that you could do? It's like that. It'll back up your critical Windows system files, your drivers, your boot files, and your registry. So if you do something, you install something or break something in Windows, you can do a restore point to before that ever happened. I can't tell you guys how many times over the years I've had people get viruses and things on their computer, and I was able to ask them like, well, when did you get the virus? And they're like, well, I think I got it yesterday. I was doing something and blah, blah, blah. I was able to basically say, okay, let's go back to a restore point to before then, and I was able to restore their computer back. Of course, System Restore used to always be on by default in those days. Now you have to turn it on. So I highly recommend turning it on in your environment. It does use a little space, but it's well worth it because you can save yourself a lot of time in fixing things. Another thing is if your computer won't boot, if it's having problems booting, you might be able to do a System Restore through this thing called the Windows RE and get fix your computer that way. Okay, so that's what System Restore is. That's what you're going to get out of that. Again, handy little tool there that you can use. The next thing I want to show you is the recovery environment in Windows 10. Okay, so to get in the recovery environment, I'm going to hold the Shift key down on my keyboard now, and I'm going to tell the computer to reboot. So here we go. We're right-clicking, and we're going to tell the computer to restart. Okay, so here I am in the Windows RE. I held down the Shift key and I rebooted, and I'm now in this. Now, I would like to warn you guys, a lot of people think that this is sort of like hitting F8. So back in the day of Windows 7, we used to be able to hit F8 when the computer was rebooting, and we could get into the advanced boot menu and safe mode and all that. Actually, that feature is gone. You cannot get into safe mode and all that by hitting F8 anymore. And the reason is because Microsoft needed to account for the fact that a lot of computers are coming with something called UEFI, which is Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, and that feature allows a computer to boot extremely fast if you're on a solid state drive. And so they took that out, so you have to get into these menus another way. You can hold down Shift and reboot your computer, but let me warn you, holding down Shift and powering your computer on would not do that, okay? So you're probably wondering, well, how would I get into this menu if things were really broken and I couldn't boot up Windows and I don't have F8? And Shift doesn't do anything if you're turning the computer on. Well, if Windows attempts to boot 3 times and it cannot boot 3 times, it'll automatically try to bring you into this recovery environment, okay? Another way to do it is you could boot off with a Windows 10 DVD or flash drive, and you can get into the recovery environment that way as well. So there are some alternatives, but if you do have Windows 10 booted up, you can hold down Shift, you can restart the computer, and you'll come right here into what is known as Windows RE, the recovery environment. So if you look, there's 3 options here I've got. I've got continue and go ahead and boot up Windows 10. I've got troubleshoot, okay, if I'm wanting to troubleshoot Windows 10, which is the one I'm going to go with in a second. And then if I wanted to turn the computer off, I could choose this option. I'm going to go with troubleshoot, and then I can choose to reset my computer if I want. Now you have 2 options if you're going to reset your computer. You can say reset my computer and keep my files, or reset my computer and remove everything. Okay, it's pretty obvious where they're going with that. If you do a reset with keep my files, it's going to refresh all the Windows system files, but you're going to get to keep your files. If you wanted to remove everything, maybe you want to refresh this computer and have nothing on it for a new employee that's starting, you're going to do remove everything. They also call this a Windows 10 refresh. So even though it says reset, it's actually a refresh. So those are your 2 options there. I'm going to go back. I'm going to choose advanced options. And this is another way I could do a system restore if I wanted to. I talked about that previously. And then I could do uninstall updates if I wanted to uninstall updates. System image recover. If you remember, I talked about the little backup tool, and I could create an image. I could actually recover using that image if I had an image right here. This is a startup repair, so if I'm having some startup problems, I might be able to repair those problems by going there. And then finally, I've got a command prompt. I can also troubleshoot using some commands if I was having some issues with Windows. And then you have startup settings, which I'm going to click on that. That'll let me reboot into something called the advanced boot menu. And if I do that, I have all these options here. Let me zoom in on those for you. Okay, so the first option you'll notice I have is enable low resolution video mode. So this is going to let me boot my computer up using default graphics settings. Okay, I had a computer one time, they ran a program that changed the resolution so high on their computer they couldn't see anything. So we'd reboot the computer and the monitor would go dark. So the way I fixed it was with that. I actually booted the computer using low resolution video mode, and I was able to change the settings to a lower resolution. You've also got debugging mode. This is going to generate debug logging information in Windows. So if you're really having some problems, you can try and troubleshoot using this debugging mode. If you ever get on Microsoft's help desk and you get to like tier 3, sometimes they'll let you submit that information and they'll help you troubleshoot it. You could enable just boot logging if you wanted, and that's just going to show you log messages that pop up while the computer is in the process of booting. Okay, and it'll let you know if something is stopping you from booting, like a service or a file or something like that. You have safe mode. Now there's 3 versions of safe mode. You don't see them here, but if you rebooted right now you would. You have just regular safe mode, which is going to do just safe mode lets you boot Windows into a mode that uses all of the bare minimum requirements that are needed to boot Windows. So bare minimum drivers, bare minimum services, all of that stuff is going to be done through safe mode. This is great if Windows has really got some problems, and I'm afraid that there's some services or some applications or something that are breaking it, maybe some drivers. Safe mode will disable all that and let you boot up. There's a second version of safe mode called safe mode with networking. that'll let you boot up into safe mode with your network drivers. Regular safe mode doesn't give you network drivers, but safe mode with networking will. And then lastly, there is what's called safe mode in command prompt. This lets you boot up safe mode into a command line interface. So if your graphical side is really jacked up and you need to at least get in and run some commands, you might be able to use safe mode with command prompt. This next option, disable driver signature enforcement. So all drivers that run in Windows 10 have to be digitally signed by default. But let's say your company had a customized piece of hardware and they had a special driver that was built for it, and they wanted to install that piece of hardware, and the driver was not trusted or not signed by Microsoft. You could turn the requirement of it being signed off by using this option here. Okay, keep in mind you do have to be an administrator in order to do that. All right. This next option is disable early launch anti-malware protection. So we have virus protection that's going to scan our computer while it's booting. You can imagine, though, what might happen if somehow the virus scanner thought you had a virus and it's preventing you from booting. So what you could do is disable that so that you can go ahead and get past that and boot up and hopefully fix whatever's going on. Of course, the problem with that, there's sort of a catch-22. If you did have a virus and the virus is preventing you from booting, or the antivirus is preventing you from booting because of the virus, you'd have to disable it so you could boot and hopefully clean that virus. So, kind of a catch-22 there. But this last thing is disable automatic restart on system failure. So one of the things that can happen if you do something that Windows doesn't expect, or a program does something that Windows doesn't expect, you can get the legendary blue screen of death, BSOD. When that happens, the blue screen of death is going to do what's called a memory dump. It's going to take everything in memory and dump it into a file and leave you to decipher it for later. It'll also give you an error message. The problem is sometimes that error message flashes up on the screen so fast that we don't actually get to see what it is. So, and then the computer reboots. So what this does is it disables that automatic reboot so that I would have time to look at the error message if I wanted. Okay, so those are your advanced startup options, and that is the Windows RE, and those are some of the things I can do to help me in recovering Windows.